guys. Hazbin Hotel started as an indie pilot on YouTube in 2019. And it's really cool to see a passion project go from what was a passion project of a small team of people into a massive A24 show. A lot of the cast got changed, a lot of the designs got changed, and a lot of those cast members got switched out for very big names in Broadway. Like, we're talking Christian Borle, Erica Hemingway, Keith David, Alex Newell. Like, those are big names in Broadway. Jeremy Jordan. Almost forgot about Jeremy Jordan. That journey is the foundation of why the fan base of Hazbin Hotel is so protective. If you're new to the show or you need a refresher, I'm not going to go into the full plot because obviously I'm going to recommend that you watch the show yourself to form your own opinion. But for a general context, we're in hell. Hell is incredibly overpopulated, so heaven holds a yearly extermination to kill off many of the sinners. Season 1 focuses on Charlie Morningstar, who is the Princess of Hell and the son of Lucifer, and Lilith, trying to open up a hotel to rehabilitate sinners called the Hazbin Hotel. Her goal is to rehabilitate sinners so that instead of being slaughtered, they can go to heaven to be redeemed. The first season ends with a huge battle where the hotel staff fight back, someone dies, and then they realize that the status quo can be broken. Season 2 picks up in the aftermath. The immediate threat of being killed off in extermination isn't completely gone, but everything is kind of left up for grabs. So while Charlie is trying to build a community and trying to deal with the repercussions of this kind of thing, we have the V's, specifically Vox, who is trying to move in to take over. And it's no longer just a fight to stay alive. It is a fight for who gets to run the place, tell the story of Hell's future. Before I kind of do a deep dive about my thoughts, I can't go forward without addressing the elephant in the room. There's a lot of discourse with Hazbin Hotel. People are very quick to label the show as problematic or just say it's hard to watch in general. And I'm not here to tell you it's perfect. A lot of those criticisms are valid. A lot of the character designs are the same. There's no diversity outside of the LGBT community. There's a lot of unnecessary swearing, especially in the first season. The pacing is a mess. There's a lot of continuity issues that really mess up the plot and really take you out of the show. But I do think that there is something happening with the show that, we can still talk about. We can still enjoy the show and have an analytical conversation from it. Part of it is the medium. It is an animated adult show talking about adult themes, sexual violence, systematic trauma, addiction in this high energy, cringe animation. There's a disconnect for people who see these childish visuals handling these adult themes. But I also wonder, is the discomfort actually about seeing irredeemable people try to be better? It's a lot easier for people to kind of write off this thing as cringe than to sit with the messy, uncomfortable conversation of redemption. So the discourse isn't completely right, but it's not completely wrong either. It's kind of just surface level. And today I want to talk about my thoughts, my opinions on season 1 and 2 of Hazbin Hotel. So, hi guys, if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're not new, then welcome back. I am going to be spoiling season 1 and 2 of Hazbin Hotel. So if you have not seen the show already, I recommend that you see the show. If you don't want to watch the show, I kind of understand. Yeah, spoiler territory. Okay, to kind of start off this conversation, we're going to talk about Vox. Clearly, he is the background of my thing. He is a big, prominent part of season 2. He is not just a villain. He's a very intentional parallel to what we are seeing in modern day. Modern day meaning United States. Because I have a lot of international viewers, which if you're international, I appreciate you. But I'm going to make a lot of references to American politics because it sucks. We as the audience, we see his ego, his climb for power, his hunger for it. But if you look at what he is talking about, especially in season 2, when you have the song Vox DEI, from the standpoint of a sinner living in hell, Vox makes a lot of sense. I need you to think about this for a second. Why should sinners just sit on the sidelines when angels come down and murder them and their friends every single year? For what? Because the invisible upstairs and people up in heaven say so? Vox gets the population riled up by asking questions that they're already thinking. He doesn't bother trying to run for office because he's already an overlord. He understands that in this new digital age, you don't need a title if you already own the screens and the apps and you're getting people to do your will through hypnosis and things like that. He uses the media to feed people facts that aren't entirely false, but aren't entirely true either. This really peaks during Vox DEI, where he tells the angels, you cannot apologize for a literal genocide with gift baskets. He's telling the angels what the sinners had been thinking this entire time. By imitating a biblically accurate angel, he's mocking Sarah and proving that her threats don't hold the same weight anymore. It's a brilliant move. He's weaponizing the angel's incompetence and broadcasting it in high definition for everybody to see. And what this is doing is it is making Charlie, who is telling people that what she is doing and advocating for is going to work, it makes her look like a child. It makes her look immature and that her solution isn't going to be the right one. For looking at this through a real world lens, Charlie is trying to fix a broken system completely. The Hazbin Hotel is a movement to tear down the walls of how afterlife is structured. She's threatening the hierarchy of heaven and the small group of overlords who hold all the power in hell. Charlie's focusing on these very simple, almost performative acts of goodness. Meanwhile, the people in hell are dealing with actual deep-rooted trauma. Vox exploits this. He frames Charlie's empathy as a weakness because in this world, the truth doesn't actually matter if you don't have the power to broadcast it. Vox controls the airwaves. It is very clear, even in season 1, the power that he holds, which means he can't just spit out facts. Even when something as massive as Serpentius getting into heaven happens, it doesn't matter if the people don't see it. And that is a very clear point that is made right before the song Speedrun to Redemption. The battle for this narrative and telling the story of what's right and what's wrong is also key when it comes to Alistair and Vox. Even though Vox has the screens and has the power, Alistair wins because he understands hell. When Alistair tricks Vox into demanding that Charlie say that Vox is the most powerful sinner in hell, it looks like a petty ego trip, but on a world built on contracts and built on deals made by other sinners, it is a very tactical move. He used Vox's obsession with himself, with being liked and seen, against him, and once Vox did that, he began to spiral. Vox's spiral comes from a very classic political paradox. He's very power hungry. He wants the ability, he wants that power and feeling of being a cult leader again. But Vox is very good at campaigning, but he's terrible at leading. He's fantastic at getting people angry and getting riled up, but when he actually wins and he captures Alistair, he captures Lucifer, he has all of these overlords, he has the power of the people, he has no idea what to do with that victory. He is mocking Charlie in his face at a table full of overlords where realistically, a real leader should be leaning on the two people who had helped him get to this point. And instead, what he does is he reverts to petty grudges when he loses to Alistair and loses that singular deal with him. Vox uses petty grudges and uses the literal super weapon as a personal vendetta instead of actually doing what he had intended to do the entire time, what he had been preaching. And we see this played out in bad for us. Vox recruited all these overlords because he realizes that despite his tech, he needs numbers of high powerful people to feel powerful. As much as Alistair has his own vendetta, he makes a good point. Vox needs other people to make him feel strong. In season 2, we get more of a backstory on characters like Serpentius, Vox, Alistair, and then we get a little bit on Angel. The backstory on Vox is that he was a weatherman, he climbed up the ranks as an anchorman, and he basically led a form of a cult. So Vox getting Alistair under him and making that contract and deal with him was not only because of that personal grudge, because of that vendetta, but it was also to create a public power shift. In bad with us, Vox having Alistair under him and under the V's elevates their status. He fails once he tries to put that personal vendetta against Alistair, because while he did have the V's and he did ignore them earlier before he had Alistair, once he had Alistair under him, under that deal, the rest of it just went kind of off the hill for him and his plans because he was essentially ignoring the people that he had built things with. Velvet and Valentino are completely rational. They are driven for what's best for their businesses. And as soon as Vox's personal obsession became a threat to their lives, Valentino literally cuts him off by ripping his TV head off. Even the superpowered weapon that Vox creates and uses is a metaphor for the worst kind of unfiltered capitalism. A captured Lucifer literally powers it, and they are harvesting a natural resource, which is divine power, just to fuel the ambitions of Vox's tech. Vox's cynicism was powerful enough to start a movement, but it destroyed him because he didn't actually care about the people he was leading. He really only cared about power. Charlie survives this season, and her methods and her ideologies and her path forward works because despite her mistakes, her sincerity is the only element in hell that doesn't actually fall apart under greed and power. Sincerity is a great foundation that Charlie has, but when you take a good intention and you try to apply it to a room full of people with deep systemic trauma, sincerity isn't enough. You have to look at the actual work being done inside the hotel. So from a psychological standpoint, I have to ask, is Charlie's method actually rehabilitation or is it just supportive housing? Honestly, I don't know if the Princess of Hell knows what works when it comes to clinical recovery. A lot of what she tries to do, like the trust falls, the singing, the apologies, the therapy sessions, it's therapeutic in the way that a hobby is therapeutic, but is it fixing the root of people's behavior? I'd argue that the progress that we see in season 2 isn't because of the lessons, it's because they've built an actual community. In the premiere of season 2, people were there just to learn how to kill angels. But by the finale, they have people who are staying because for the first time in their afterlives, they aren't being exploited. That's not rehab in a clinical sense. It's the effect of having a home and people who actually give a shit about you. Charlie's song Speedrun for Redemption discusses very modest, conservative ways to receive redemption, which is fascinating when the show itself is so uncertain of what being good actually looks like. Redemption is boring if you don't have the community that helped you get there. Serpentius is the ultimate proof of this. In Piss, a love song, it's reiterated that he was redeemed because of his community, specifically his connection with Cherry Bomb and having a reason to finally do something good. Now that he's in heaven, he's struggling to move on because he's no longer surrounded by the very people who brought him there in the first place. It turns out being good is hard to sustain when you're isolated from the support system that gave your growth meaning. We see the same thing with Husk. He is a perfect example of how redemption comes at the cost of community. After Husk begins to spiral into his old habits of drinking and gambling, it's Angel Dust who brings him back. Husk doesn't return to the hotel because, he learned a rehab lesson. He decided drinking and gambling is bad. He returns because he's reminded of the community that he's leaving behind. It's that social tie that makes him and Cherry decide to go fight for Angel at the end of the show. This shift in how, personally, I view the hotel changes with how I view Charlie. Her optimism is intense. She lives in a world full of cannibals, extreme violence, and literal monsters, yet she is incredibly bubbly. So at one point, does Charlie's optimism stop being a personality trait and start being a trauma response? Let's think about her environment growing up. Her mom, Lilith, is gone. Her dad spent years deeply depressed and essentially powerless because it's revealed that he can't harm other sinners. And in a family dynamic like that, where your dad is depressed, your mom is gone, a child will often take the role of an emotional anchor. She has to prove to herself that she has a greater purpose. On top of that, she's the princess of hell. In Recession Line, since her dad has no power, is the most powerful person in hell, but she is constantly disrespected. She is constantly made fun of. So if she stops believing in the hotel, she has to face the reality of a world run by overlords and a family that isn't there and that has no power. Her happiness isn't joy. It is a shield against a total psychological crash. One of which we see a few times throughout the show of her completely breaking down and having Vaggie having to put her up. Now, going back to talking about Serpentius, he is her first success story. He's the first person to get officially redeemed at the end of season 1. But we gotta kind of look at why he ascended to heaven. Was he redeemed just because he's a good person? No. In his past life, Serpentius was the definition of passive inaction. He witnessed what I think was Jack the Ripper murdering people over and over and over again in the alley and didn't say anything. And he felt guilty with that. So he wasn't evil in like the grand way. He was just fearful and a coward. The show confirms that the reason why he went up to heaven is because he reached true selflessness. He didn't get there through a workbook, through singing, through dancing, through trust falls. He got there because he had a support system who valued him, and he sacrificed himself and took his own sin and redeemed himself for that sin, if that makes sense. It was a mix of atoning for his past and having people around him who gave him the guidance to want to be better, who gave him the reason to want to sacrifice himself. It shows that, in my eyes, redemption isn't a checklist. It depends on specific sins that you're atoning for, something that Charlie realizes for 1 second and then completely forgets, literally a second later, because the V's are there and she's making a fool of herself. He didn't change his heart, he changed his social environment, and that's what allowed his heart to change. At the end of the day, Charlie's trust exercises might feel cringe, but the community that she's building is real. It's not the lessons that are saving these people. It's the fact that they finally have a place where they aren't just used as a resource. However, a good heart doesn't always equal a good method, and a safe space only goes so far when the world outside and the contracts these people are signing and the deals that they're making are holding them back. You can't truly heal in a system where you don't even own your own soul. And that brings us to the most challenging part of this entire show, the reality of autonomy and the systems of abuse abuse that keep hell running. Now, if you're familiar with the show, and at this point, if you're watching this video, I'm sure you are familiar with the show, but for those who are not familiar with the show watching this video, hell runs on soul contracts. If we look at soul contracts through the lens of sexual autonomy, what does it say about a system where you could literally sign away your consent? In the world of Hazbin Hotel, a soul contract isn't just a business deal, it's a metaphor for real world systemic abuse. It's a way of violating someone's boundaries. It turns a person into property, and once that paper is signed, the system doesn't care about your no. It's the ultimate removal of agency and a heavy thing to package in an adult cartoon. Angel Dust is the biggest example of this because he is an incredibly over-sexualized character, and he's the most complicated. There's a lot of debate in the fandom about whether Angel Dust and Valentino's relationship is a good representation or if it's just too much. I think that it's not perfect, but it's a conversation that we can have. Early on, Angel Dust is always on. He's always making sexual jokes. He's always loud. He's proactive. He's flirting with everybody. But as he connects with Husk, we see that it is a defense mechanism at times. There's a huge difference between the Angel that is working and the Angel that is at the hotel hanging out with his friend. When he's working, he has the confidence of someone who has mastered his sexual identity. But he's also being pushed way past his limit. We see multiple times throughout the show where Angel is abused, misused, thrown to the side, and those scenes are the strongest because they are the most uncomfortable. Both in season 1, where he's thrown around by Valentino, and season 2, where he is thrown around by Vox. The tragedy is that Angel Dust loves his work. He just lost the right to say how and when he does it. Seeing him try to find his own version of independence while still being tied to Valentino is a very realistic portrayal of how reclaiming your life after abuse is a difficult thing to do. But Valentino doesn't work alone. He's part of the V's. Him, Velvet, and Vox all work together to represent television, social media, and the porn industry. As a content creator, I find this trio fascinating because they mirror how power and influence work in our world right now. They use the screens, they use technology to exert psychological control. It's not just about fame, it's about this inner circle. They make you feel special, they bring you in, and then the second you aren't helpful, they push you back and they toss you out. This is very clear in the season 2 opener, Has Been Guaranteed, Trust Us. When the V's discard people and they push them aside and they say they don't have a use for them anymore, they're still told to continue telling people how great they are, how amazing they are. Vox uses literal hypnosis to control these people, but honestly, with the way digital branding and media negotiations work today, he doesn't really need it. The V's are just a supernatural version of the digital consumption we're already stuck in, where the person on the screen owns the narrative, no matter what the reality is. While a lot of people focus on Angel Dust as a primary example of this systemic abuse, the show uses Alistair to show how deep these roots go. Alistair is a terrifying being, yet he is also tied to his contract, specifically his deal with Rosie. It highlights the reality of the Helliverse. In this system, your humanity is tied directly to the deals that you make. Whether it happened in life or in death, your soul is a currency. And it's not just about sexual autonomy. It's about the total loss of self in exchange for survival or power or fame or something that will get you to feel good about yourself in hell. And this brings me to a critique that I can't ignore. Hazbin Hotel is incredibly sexual. It is an adult cartoon, so it makes sense, but it is hypersexual to a point where it's distracting. There are moments where the constant sexual jokes and comments feel like they are burying the strong plotline that we are talking about today. It makes me hard to see the actual story and why I had to take a break to kind of really break down the show, also because I got distracted by the music. Listen, when you put a bunch of Broadway actors in a studio and have them make songs, they're fire! Fire! However, if you look through all the cringe, there's a very specific and gruesome realism that people miss. A lot of viewers want the Disney version of healing. This specific scene in season 2 really made me realize, like, I want to do a video on this. It is the scene where Angel Dust, after he's saved by Cherry and Husk, after they do all their work, they have this big badass end of season fight, he still goes back to Valentino. Because in these Disney endings, just being saved and having everything go fine is not how trauma or systemic abuse works. He still goes back to his abuser after all of this. And that is the most honest thing about the show. It highlights that a cycle of abuse isn't a straight line. You can have a community that loves you, that is there for you, that supports you, that gives you a safe place to sleep, that helps you build into a better person. But when a system or a legal contract literally owns your autonomy, escaping isn't as simple as just walking away. It's a slow and painful process of trying to reclaim your soul in a world that is designed to keep you on the clock. The irony of Hazbin Hotel is that while Charlie is looking to heaven as the ultimate goal, heaven itself is actually just as unstable as hell. The end of the exterminations in season 1 broke this front of the angels. First, you have Sarah, who is the establishment, who wants to keep things the way they are and is weaving between trying to apologize for her sins and trying to understand what's right for her people. You have Lute, who is an extremist who wants war and wants revenge for the death of Adam. And then you have Emily, who is demanding that they do the right thing. I find it so interesting watching Sarah try to ask for forgiveness for a genocide when she's been proven wrong. Because how do you ask for forgiveness for a genocide you've been committing for decades? She's stuck between Lute's violence, justified violence, of the threat of hell coming forward and hurting people, which was proven in season 2 with Vox, cutting a hole through hell, and Emily's demands for justice and demands for peace, which results in the gift basket situation. It proves that in times where there are extreme opposites, trying to find a middle can fail, and it's hard to do. And all it did was make the enemy, Vox, even angrier. The failure of leadership and the failure of a correct, distinct answer in heaven trickles all the way down to the king of hell, Lucifer, Mr. Jeremy Jordan. If you look at Lucifer, you can see him as burnt out. I don't think that's it. I think that we're looking at a man who is clearly and incredibly depressed and also feels completely powerless. Like I said earlier, he shares that he cannot hurt sinners. So he realized that the only thing he has left is to try to help his daughter fulfill her dream, a dream that after season 2, they both know is possible. When we see him react in Vox Populi, he's using all these flashing lights and visuals to seem like this powerful, untouchable king. But unlike the other angels, like I said, he can't do any harm to the sinners. That whole display is just a way of him trying to regain a sense of power, when in reality, he's just as stuck as everybody else. That feeling of being stuck is something we also see in Vaggie and Charlie's dynamic this season. Their love started from pity. Charlie was the first person to show Vaggie kindness before she even knew Vaggie was an angel. For a while, it felt like Vaggie was serving as a manager for the hotel to pay back a debt. But Vaggie is very clearly not just there out of obligation. She genuinely believes in Charlie and wants to stand beside her. It moves from a lopsided caretaker dynamic into an actual partnership, where they are moving from a place of fixing each other to actually trying to build something together. But even with a healthy partnership leading the way, some people don't want to be saved in this universe. And now that people know that redemption is possible, it makes the villains who choose to stay in hell, who choose to stay overlords, so much more interesting. Are they evil, or are they just comfortable in their behaviors? Think about it from their perspective. What is there to gain in heaven? There's churros, unicorns, and Hallmark movies all the time. They don't have any power up there. And all of the control that they've been building this entire time would be gone. For everyday sinners, it is great, it is appealing, but for overlords like the V's, they're enjoying themselves. People like Vox aren't missing out. They'd rather be powerful in a broken system than be nobody in a perfect one. Season 1, in my opinion, felt much more earned because the stakes were high. We lost a character and the grief felt real. Season 2 is a different kind of terror because the threat isn't a specific date that they have to get to defend themselves. It's a population fueled by rage and disappointment that finally have somewhat of a solution with the Hazbin Hotel. When you take away the curse words and the designs and the valid criticisms of the show, seeing an entire population get riled up by a leader like Vox is actually terrifying because we've seen it. Yes, the show is incredibly cringe, but it's hitting on a lot of real world parallels that we can't really ignore. The show doesn't exactly hide its influences. When you hear lines like Manifest Destiny used to justify the V's expansion or Make Hell Great Again being thrown around, it's blatantly obvious who they're talking about. This season in particular is an analysis on how mass manipulation works, how you can take a group of people who have been neglected and written off by the system and trick them into thinking that a different kind of monster is their savior. Vox isn't just a demon in hell. He's a warning about what happens when we let the loudest person in the room say that they know the truth just because they're the ones talking. Is this show a masterpiece? No. Is it good? Sometimes. But Hazbin Hotel is a fun, queer, inclusive ride that asks some tough questions about what it actually means to be a person in a broken system. It forces us to look at the tension between who we are inside and the person that we represent in the system. Whether it's the legalism of hell or the establishment of heaven, whatever they want us to be. Beneath the hypersexualized jokes and the animation, there's a very real conversation about the ugly side of growth. It's an honest look at that non-linear process. In a world that loves to put people in boxes, either sinner or saint or whatever, the show, to me, argues that those labels are often just tools for control. It's a message I can get behind, even if the delivery is incredibly messy. I love the show. I love the queer representation. I would love to see more non-binary representation. I'd love to the show lean into more BIPOC representation, especially more plus-size representation too. Hell is supposed to be diverse, and I think there's more space for more bodies and voices that reflect that. At the end of the day, if you can get past the surface level cringe, there is a lot worth talking about. It's not a show I'm going to force anybody to watch, especially if you aren't into that animation style, you aren't into musicals. There's like 3 songs every single episode. But for me, the themes are very relevant and very fun. I will continue to listen to the season 2 soundtrack. I'm going to probably listen to the season 2 soundtrack as I'm editing this video, and I will be set for season 3. If you made it this far, thank you. Thank you for hanging out with me. I know I covered a lot, but now I want to hear from you, because the discourse around the show is exactly why I wanted to kind of talk about this. Also, because I've had the soundtrack on repeat since season 2 ended. I want to know, for people who are fans of the show, why do you keep coming back to this show? And for people who aren't fans of the show, why haven't you watched it? Why don't you care? Why'd you stick around to the end of this video if you don't care for the show? Is it the political stuff? Is it the cringe? Is it the controversy? Is it the music? Do you think redemption in hell is possible outside of Serpentious? Do you think it's a checklist? Is it really about having a community? That's my argument. I want to hear everything. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I think that's all I have. If you like this video, please like this video. It really helps this channel grow. Ooh, comment what you want me to do next. I know I have people who want me to do more My Little Pony, but if there's any musicals, TV shows, movies, video games you want me to cover, let me know in the comments below. I am so grateful you guys are here. I'm so excited to see what we'll do next, what we'll do in the future, what 2026 is going to bring. And I will see you guys all on the next take. Bye-bye.